And one of our friends made the semi-long trip from Knoxville over to Tuscaloosa. Casey K, you're looking fresh and vibrant today. I know it was a long weekend. How were we were just talking during the break, how were your travels to Alabama for that third Saturday in October game?
Yeah, they were good. I was really excited to see Dixieland Delight in the fourth quarter. I have a friend, one of my best friends, went to Alabama, so she works in South Carolina now covering the Gamecocks, but she did warn me that would be one of the best parts. So they do a good little light show down there. I appreciated, the atmosphere. Obviously, Tennessee couldn't pull out the win, didn't really feel like they were going to win at all the entire game, even when it was tied up 7-7. Kind of felt like Alabama had the upper hand the entire time, just with kind of the atmosphere and vibe. But overall, it was a good trip. Made the trip back on Sunday, took a little nap, and then back at it.
It never ends. It never ends. We'll get to the upcoming game in a moment, but let's reflect back on that Alabama game. Joey Aguilar, the star quarterback for this football team, came in with a lot of high hopes. He played really well against Georgia early on. We've seen him throughout the course of the season play very well. What were some of your takeaways from Joey and the Tennessee offense there in Tuscaloosa?
Joey still continues his streak of over 200 passing yards a game, which is something that's continued throughout his entire time in Division I football. So I don't think that you can put all the blame on Joey. I obviously don't think it was the best that we've seen him, but I also don't think Joey was at his best after getting banged up very early on in that game. And then they took him into the medical tent, and immediately Tennessee's back on offense. They're rushing him out, and I guess a banged up Joey Aguilar is better than a full go Jake Merklinger or George McIntyre. So throw him back out on the field. I don't think that he was at his best just physically the entire game. I think kind of saw that, but I don't really think the kind of downfalls of the offense were as much on Joey as maybe some people may think or may have put on him. I mean, he had no time to throw, mostly on that left side with Jesse Perry on the offensive line. I mean, that's where all those sacks, at least 3 out of the 4 that I'm thinking of, came from over on that side. It really wasn't the freshman David Sanders letting anything go on the, I'm like, now I'm doing my hands opposite on the right side of the offensive line. Not too much coming on that side for the sacks. It really all came on Jesse Perry's side. So I do think the offensive line was the worst that we've seen them this season. I mean, we started out the season, they hadn't allowed a sack in how many games, and now we're seeing Joey get sacked 4 times. And obviously not good for a guy who got banged up and then got hit right in the neck after getting banged up. It definitely wasn't the best for Joey, but I don't think we can put a lot of the offensive blame on him solely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really well put. And if you're just looking at just Joey's numbers overall, you kind of get a straw vision of what actually happened in the football game. Are the offensive line concerns, do you think it's a one-off, or do you think it's something that is a little bit more concerning moving forward?
I mean, that definitely is concerning, I would say. I don't know if it's a one-off. I would say that their performance was concerning, but we have seen them be so strong at the beginning of the season. Definitely feels like once we hit SEC play, as would be expected, they were more challenged. I don't really know if there's one thing that we can pinpoint of being wrong on the offensive line, because you could say it's youth, but the youthful part seemed to be doing fine and coming along. So I think that you would say you would hope that it's a one-off situation, but it's absolutely concerning going forward, especially if Joey, I mean, they're saying he's totally fine, he's going to be a full go, everything's good there, but you don't want your quarterback getting banged up like that going forward. He can only take so much of those hits. I'm actually a little bit surprised that we saw him come back right away after getting hit like that. I thought maybe we'd see at least a drive with Merklinger or McIntyre. Not really sure who would be put in that situation, to be honest, under kind of what Heupel's perspective would be. But I definitely think you want to get that under control, and you can't have him getting sacked 4 times and then getting hit, banged up pretty bad, even when he's not getting taken down behind the line of scrimmage.
Casey, I feel like in these rivalry games, there are these historic moments that happen every year, and Zabian Brown with the 99-yard pick six to end the first half was really a backbreaker for Tennessee. Were you kind of surprised that they called for a pass? I know there was like 4 seconds left in the half. I know he ran it out.
Yeah. There was 9 seconds left in the half,
gotcha.
so, and they didn't have a timeout. So I think in that situation, you're thinking you run and you could be out, right? At the pass, you get 2 opportunities potentially. If he doesn't get into the end zone, you have way more opportunity to have 2 more plays there, especially with being out of timeout. So I do understand why he went for the pass. I think that people's frustration is that when Alabama called the timeout, is that Heupel maybe didn't really change the play call, or because Alabama called the timeout, they were able to kind of put together what Tennessee was able to do with the play action. So I think at that point, maybe you try to mix it up and you go for the ballsy call and you go for the run play rather than go for the pass call. I think if Alabama hadn't called that timeout, that pass would have maybe worked a little bit better. They wouldn't have had time to game plan for it like they did. But I mean, the team had confidence in it after the game. All the players were asked. Deshaun Bishop said, well, that's the call from our offensive coordinator. That's the call from Josh Heupel. That's the call that they had confidence in, and we have confidence in them. So Heupel didn't really say anything groundbreaking, just basically that, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and it's a big play. I don't think that it was as detrimental of a play as maybe we all thought going into the half. You go into the half, you're down 16, 17 points instead of being down just 5. And, we're all coming off the field as media being like, okay, well, game's over. But no, it's not. They come out, stop Alabama. That's the best possible thing you could have done after that. And then the second best possible thing to do is score, and you put it in a 10-point game. So definitely a momentum shifter. I don't think it was a complete crush. I think Tennessee lost it themselves in the second half. But obviously we were in the Alabama vibe, but I did hear from my fiance and friends who were watching it out at a local restaurant here in Knoxville that you could hear a pin drop when that happened. Everything went silent. So definitely different vibe if you were watching it in Knoxville, favoring bar restaurant rather than in Alabama. They were all quite happy about that situation.
Do you think Heupel was fully set on going for the touchdown and not trying to kick it to make it a one-possession game?
I think yes. I think Heupel was fully set on going for the touchdown. I don't think he was trying to kick it. I think this game is one of the games we actually saw Heupel be aggressive. I mean, they went for, off the top of my head, I don't remember how many exact 4th downs they went for, but I know they went for 3 in a row going on 4th down. And I was impressed. I don't think Heupel has been that gutsy in a while, at least since I got here in October of 2022. I haven't really seen him be that gutsy on 4th downs, but I feel like he knew he had to at Alabama. So I think it is positive to see him maybe shifting the mindset a little bit into being a little bit more aggressive offensively and kind of getting success from it. I mean, they got all those 4th downs. They had 2, I believe, from Kitzelman, and then they had 1 from Deshaun Bishop, I believe. So I think that it was really interesting to see him be gutsy and go for it on 4th down and watch it pay off. But I definitely think that at the end of the day, he was going for the touchdown. I don't think that he felt he could win this game on field goals, and you got to go for it.
Absolutely. You mentioned Deshaun Bishop. He had more than 100 yards, a pair of touchdowns, one of the bright spots for the Tennessee offense. We got a chance to hear from Coach Josh Heupel about his star running back.
He made a couple of elite cuts and making people miss to have extended long runs, but he has done a really good job of pressing it. And the first outside zone play, Lance does a great job of handling the edge of the defense, and we're able to get around it. Next one, we cut up inside and make somebody miss. Deshaun's, I was just talking about being the same competitor every single day. Like, exactly what you're getting from him.
Casey, I wanted to ask you about Deshaun Bishop because, as we mentioned at the beginning of the season with both you and Sam as well, the fact that this is kind of like a 3-headed monster as far as the backfield, but it feels like Bishop over the last couple of weeks has really hit his stride, more than 100 yards in each of the last 2 games. Where have you seen him to kind of turn the corner and the way that the offensive staff will use him moving forward?
I mean, Deshaun Bishop said it himself that his carries are increasing and he's taking full advantage of it. I mean, I would say he's pretty much the only bright spot that we saw against Alabama. I would say early on in that game, we saw Miles Kitzelman be used more than I feel like we've seen any tight end use this year, but then obviously, he doesn't make the catch because it gets intercepted at the end of the half, so that kind of ruins the storyline of him getting more action. But Bishop being really one of the main and only storylines offensively that was really working. I mean, if you ask Bishop, he's not taking any of the credit. The big thing this year is the fact that he really committed to his faith ahead, or maybe mid 2 seasons ago when he got injured during his freshman year, and it really took a big jump ahead of this season that he's really committed to his faith. I got to sit down one-on-one with him a few weeks ago, and I mean, that's just what's driven everything for him. You won't hear him taking credit for it. You'll hear him saying how he feels he is kind of put on this place. He's, God's not giving him the yardage on the ground. He's put him here to spread his word. So that's what Bishop is crediting all of his success to this year. And yeah, like you said, we've seen him really progress in the last few weeks, kind of seen Peyton Lewis and Star Thomas use a little bit less. Obviously, Bishop went out later in that Arkansas game, and then you bring in Peyton Lewis, and he gets kind of those shorter yardages. I think what's really stood out about Bishop recently, what you heard Heupel talk to, is the fact that he's able to get those longer runs again, which is actually what we saw him get touchdowns on last year. He had a 40-some yarder, a 50-some yarder, and then I believe his other one was around 20-some yards. So he wasn't really used in that short yardage.
Right.
That was Dylan Sampson, and now that's kind of Peyton Lewis. And Star Thomas is maybe more of a blend of the two, but the only person that's really getting that consistent success recently on those longer runs is Deshaun Bishop, and I think that that's getting him a little bit more of the time and the carries, because yes, it's great to have those guys who can punch into small yardage and to get a fourth down when it's needed and to punch in a 2-yard touchdown. But if Tennessee wants to have the same success run game wise that they've had under Heupel, when they had Dylan Sampson, when they had Jabari Small, when they had Jalen Wright, you got to be able to get the yard, like you got to be able to average more than 5 yards a carry.
Right.
And Deshaun Bishop is becoming that guy for them.
Absolutely. Let's zoom out just a little bit here, Casey. Obviously, 2 losses is not a death sentence. This same Tennessee team last year had 2 losses, one to Georgia towards the end of the year, still found a way to make it in the final 12 in the college football playoff. For this year's team, I feel like it's kind of a tightrope, high wire act here of balancing, hey, we have to win every game, but also taking it one game at a time. From a mentality standpoint, you cover this program. What do you think the message will be, both said out loud and just said through their practice and their work, with the way they'll handle these next 5 games to close out the season?
I think the message is that you can't slip up. And I do think that in Tennessee's 2 losses, what we've really seen is them hurt themselves. I think more in this one than in Georgia. I mean, it just felt like everything was self-inflicted for Tennessee against Alabama. I think Georgia was kind of a toss-up. You come down to the end and overtime works in Georgia's favor. I think this one, Tennessee really lost. And I think that going forward, the biggest thing about last year is that Georgia loss came so late in the year. You already had the momentum. You had more wins under your belt. I think you really got to lock in, and you can't have the penalties. You can't have the offensive line slip up. Everyone's got to be on their game. I mean, 10-2 is not a death sentence when it comes to the playoffs, but 9-3, I mean, maybe you get lucky and you get in, but it pretty much is. So you got to get through Florida, which you haven't won it in since 2003.
Right.
They've beaten Florida, but not in the swamp since 2003. You got to play Kentucky on the road. Tennessee has not gone back-to-back, or let me rephrase. In the last 3 years, Tennessee has had back-to-back consecutive road losses under Heupel. So if history repeats itself, that could be this week with Tennessee losing at Alabama and then getting back on the road and losing against Kentucky. Now, they haven't lost against Kentucky on the road since 2017, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen this year. We all saw Kentucky go neck and neck with Texas this past week, so not out of the question. Then you also have Oklahoma, number 13 right now, that comes into play at home, and you really can't forget about Vandy this year. Tennessee hasn't lost to Vandy in quite some time either. I think I wrote down the date. 2018 is the last time that Tennessee lost to Vandy. So, I mean, you're looking at a potential, you could lose to Florida. It's not out of the question. You could lose to Vandy. You could lose to Oklahoma. You could lose at Kentucky. So you've got a lot of tight SEC games that you got to win, or you're going to finish out the season 6-6. I'm feeling pretty safe about New Mexico State, but again, you never know. So you really got to lock in. You can't afford to lose one of them, much less any of them, if you're looking even for a quality bowl game. So I think you got to lock in. I think that that's the message they were conveying after the Alabama game, is you got to flush it. You got to move on. You got to get back on track. But we also got to get some pieces working together. You know, it was just the defense that was kind of messing them up at the beginning of the year. Now we saw things falter on the offense. Now we saw more falter on the defense. You know, if they don't get their turnovers, then we don't have any bright spots in the defense. Like the fact that they were getting turnovers was kind of keeping the defense, you know, out of the big hitting light of being like, what is going on with Tennessee's defense? But then we didn't see them get any turnovers except that fumble recovery that they didn't do anything with. And then you're kind of looking at the defense and you're like, where are you at? So I think you got to lock in all facets of everything if you want to still have a chance at playoffs. I think the fact that they have 2 losses early in the season is a little bit more concerning than that late loss against Georgia last year.
Casey, I'm big on hypothetical situations here. And I feel like I'd love to get your input on this, but I feel like there's a serious possibility that Vanderbilt and Tennessee could play each other the last week of the season and the winner goes to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely, if you're gonna write it, you couldn't write it any better than that, right? I'm glad that Tennessee is at home for that game.
Yeah.
Because we all know what happened last year when they came out in Nashville and then got down 14-0 within the first few minutes, and we're all standing there looking at each other like, is this really happening? Tennessee's not gonna go to the playoffs because Vandy's gonna beat them in Nashville in front of a crowd that's more Tennessee fans than Vandy fans. But no, I absolutely think that it could come down to that. I do think Tennessee's gonna get their act together. I think that they'll make it through Kentucky. I think they'll make it through Oklahoma, hopefully, because it's at home. And then, maybe Florida's a toss-up depending on what happens, with the aftermath of the firing of Billy Napier there this past weekend. But I do think it's very possible it comes down to Tennessee and Vandy fighting for a playoff spot, similar to last year, but it was only Tennessee's spot on the line. It wasn't Vanderbilt's spot on the line. So it could be a little bit different. I think that would be a great game inside Neyland Stadium, and hopefully would come out in Tennessee's favor to extend their run in the postseason, maybe go back-to-back with playoff runs.
Absolutely. Back on the road this week, I got to ask you, are you headed over to Lexington?
Yes, me and sports director Sam Granville are going to be heading up there. It'll be my second trip to Lexington. I went 2 years ago when they played in 2023. That was Joe Milton facilitating a game-winning touchdown drive at the very end, although that game felt like Tennessee was in control the entire time. Didn't really feel like it was coming down to a game-winning drive, but at the end of the day, it was. So I think it'll be a tight one. I think Tennessee will pull away. Lexington, hopefully Tennessee comes back, can break up that curse of back-to-back road losses that Heupel and Tennessee have had over the last few seasons, and then you kind of get to ease in to Oklahoma, and then you get to ease into the bye, and then you got to finish out the back half of the season with that Vandy, Florida, and a little bit of a breather room there with New Mexico. So yeah, it'll be good. I'm excited to go back up to Lexington. Both of the games I've been up there for are night games. It doesn't get better than night games, right? So those are always good.
Absolutely. Final thing, how do you handle the crossover, the transition between going from from football season into basketball season? Because there is some crossover there. I know Tennessee plays next week, I believe on Monday of next week. How do you guys handle that?
Crossover season is a little crazy. You balance it. I would say you're just doing everything all the time, right? Like we had our special for Alabama, Tennessee on Saturday morning, and then we go to Starbucks and I'm editing our special for Lady Vols that we had to get done this week. So definitely a balancing act. I think kind of just being able to turn one off and turning the other on, staying up to date on all the players and what's happening is kind of how you can approach it to be the best.
Yeah.
And you kind of just survive until you get through the playoffs, and then you can put your full attention. And luckily, that's at the time where the SEC slate is starting. So, the non-conference slate, while it's important, we all want to hone in and focus on the SEC slate. So at least those typically don't overlap too much. Now, Tennessee makes a run in a national championship, which seeming a little bit waving that could happen this year. But if it did happen, then you do go into SEC play a little bit. But traditionally, it's done beforehand. But we're excited about basketball season. They're looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Lady Vols ranked number 8 in the AP preseason poll, which is exciting. They got a new freshman class, and then men's basketball looking like a brand new team with only 4 people coming back. So I'm sure Rick Barnes will have them whipped into shape. 2 head coaches that I could not respect more. So love both of them. Love basketball season, and who knows? With how football goes, maybe we'll be looking even more forward to it, depending on what happens at Kentucky this weekend.
Maybe so. I'm still holding out hope that you guys can make it all the way to that last game of the regular season, the one that Patrick alluded to with that Vandy Tennessee game.
The script writers would be putting in overtime for that one.
If the implications were on that one.
I love it. Casey, you and both Sam Squared, as we call them here, y'all do a phenomenal job. Thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus.
Thank you so much, guys. You guys have a good day.
You do the same.